All right, guys, welcome to chapter 16. We're going to be looking at Germany, specifically Hitler. We'll do a little bit with Mussolini and Stalin, but this is it. This is the run-up into World War II. And the big question we're trying to consider here is this one, right? How was Hitler able to assume so much power so quickly from a minority, right? An extreme ideological framework. Okay, don't think at any point in time that as Hitler's kind of coming up through the Nazi system, that Nazism is the majority, or that Hitler is the people's favorite. He certainly has a large following, but it's a minority, right? And it's extreme, it's radical, it's right-wing, and those sorts of movements generally don't take hold. They're usually fringe, but we see that they do take hold here in Weimar Germany for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about all of those. This video will be in a couple pieces, by the way. Also, if you want these guided notes, I've got them. So if you would like to print them off and follow along as I'm doing the video, let me know, and I can do that for you. Or you can find the blank ones online as well. Okay. I'm also going to pull up the textbook here. It's online, so there's some good quotes in here. Maybe if I remember, I'll try and grab some of these. So we'll see. Anyway, let's get going. Hitler. Okay, there he is, yelling at the microphone, stirring up public. Public. By this point, by the time he's giving the speech, he does have probably a majority following. He's a master orator. But at this point, he's stirring up the masses. What seems crazy today, probably you would have been very attracted to back in the day, just for its power and spectacle. It's probably something to see. Anyway, Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany in 1933. Okay, Chancellor. Remember, dating back all the way to the times of German unification, 1870. The Chancellor was in many ways the most powerful man in Germany. Power is split in the Weimar era between the president and the Chancellor. Hitler will be one of these two executives. Okay, just before that, in September 1932. Nazis were the largest party in the Reichstag. Remember, the Reichstag is the German legislature, okay? And, they're the biggest one, and I pulled up this slide to show you kind of their growth. Where are Nazis? There they are, NSDAP. So 12, 107, 230, right? So by this point in time, they've got a 100-point lead over the next one, which is Social Democrats. Curiously enough, they lose a little bit of power just before Hitler is appointed as Chancellor. But still, they are the largest party. They are not the majority, so I'm going to keep that in mind, that they are not the majority. Let's go back here. They did not number any more than, get this percentage for you, 37%. 37% of the seats is the largest that they ever get. Of course, that's before Hitler becomes Chancellor. Okay, support. Where's support coming from? Well, it's coming from small farmers actually, and the lower middle class. Small farmers and the lower middle class. So not the rich initially. This is a grassroots kind of lower class movement, kind of akin to maybe a populist movement. Reminds me in some ways of Andrew Jackson's sort of draw. That's way back in the 1820s, but still in America. But still, it's coming from the normal ranks of German society, not from the upper crust. Okay, but they also have support from university students and civil servants. Civil servants are just people who work for the government. It's another name for that. Okay. Remember also that Germany has a pretty poor track record for democracy, and by 1930 the wheels are really off the wagon, so to speak. It's ruled by emergency decrees by the president at the time, Paul von Hindenburg, a World War I military man, general. And that's the only way you can get anything done, is you go, okay, we need an emergency decree, then something was done about it, right? And that's the only way really anything was handled. And this was allowed by the Weimar Constitution, Weimar. It was allowed, right? You could basically say, okay, we got an emergency, I'll make a decree, and it gets going, which kind of gives unlimited power to an executive who wants to abuse it. So keep that in mind. Hitler will definitely do that. Conservative politicians put pressure on Hindenburg, all right, to give Nazis a voice. You know, they thought that the Nazis could be molded. They thought that they could basically be kind of told what to do. I love this quote. A politician, Franz von Papen, told a friend, "Within 2 months, we'll have pushed Hitler so far into the corner, he'll squeak." Right? So they really grossly underestimate Hitler's power. And after he comes to office, he's going to become, you know, quite good at centralizing power. There he is, Joseph Goebbels and Ernst Röhm. And, you know, Hitler is completely underestimated in many ways. The conservatives thought he would be a puppet. He's not. He's his own man. As soon as he comes to power, there's a fire actually in the Reichstag. He blames it on communists, all right, which he uses as an excuse to get all of them out of the Reichstag. All right, if I go back to here, 1933, the communists are not all the way out by now, but on the decline, okay, on the decline. And Hitler's very instrumental in making sure, even in 1933 and 34, when they have more elections, that even if they're voted into power, they do not sit at all in the Reichstag chamber, okay? Also, he suspends civil liberties and due process of law using this emergency decree power. He had the right to do that. That's fine. Under the Weimar Constitution, he is allowed to do that. Like freedom of speech. Due process of law is, of course, you know, when you are arrested, you are told what your crimes are. You are brought before a jury of your peers. You have representation, right? All the normal justice system and court of law mannerisms that we take for granted, probably in America, right? That's due process of law. He also gets the Reichstag to pass what is known as the Enabling Act, okay? Now, Enabling Act gives Hitler, this is 1935, by the way, legislative power and the ability to suspend parts of the Weimar constitutions, right? So here you have an executive that not only can suspend the Constitution, but also can make laws. That's crazy big amount of power, right? This is within 2 years of coming to power. He's able to do that, convince the Reichstag to do this. And he uses the power to kick all of the parties out. So much so that in just 1 year, all parties except the Nazis are outlawed. So consolidation of power, and very quickly is able to kind of take over not only communists and rival political factions, but actually he'll be able to do the same thing inside of the Nazi system. And this is known as the Night of the Long Knives. June 30th, 1934, Hitler's Schutzstaffel, that's known as the SS, or the Black Shirts. Yes, this is kind of what the Star Wars stormtroopers are based on, FYI. By the way, Star Wars is really an allegory for World War II, if you haven't figured that out by now. They kill a leader of another party, another faction of the Nazi Party, which is this is the SA, or the Brown Shirts. Okay, they actually are known as the Stormtroopers. They literally have that name, and they're headed by this guy Ernst Röhm. It's this guy right here, right? And he's killed. He's murdered. All right, he's murdered as well as many other people in party leadership. All right, and what's funny is that Ernst Röhm is considered the radical side of the party. So when Hitler basically murders Röhm, which you kind of, when you look at that from a neutral standpoint, you're like, ooh, that's probably not a good idea. He's actually killing off the radical wing of his party, which is kind of shocking, right? And that's why maybe necessarily there wasn't a huge outcry, especially from politicians inside of Germany, because they were thinking, well, good, the radicals are gone. Now we have, we just have Hitler to worry about here, okay? Hindenburg will die in 1934. Hitler will become president as well as chancellor, so he's got both of these executive positions. He makes the armed forces swear a oath of oil to him as what is known as the Führer, the leader. And this is where Hitler really starts going kind of haywire in terms of suspending civil liberties through arrest, torturing, and imprisonments in concentration camps. Basically, he eliminates literally every political voice that doesn't stand with him. And this was all done by the secret police known as the Gestapo. Okay, so He's able to get rid of all political dissidents, which actually surprisingly aren't that numerous, which is why there's no massive outcry. By this point, Hitler is loved. Well, he's not loved is a strong word. He's widely respected in Germany for bringing about a remarkable change in the Great Depression, the conditions of the Great Depression. His magnetism, the way he uses for the word propaganda is masterful. And I wouldn't say he goes so far as to brainwash the German people, but he definitely provides good reasons to root for him. The economy, he supports big business, but he also wants to make workers happy. So initially, Hitler had attacked capitalism. He didn't think that capitalism is that viable of an enterprise for the lower middle classes. So, he basically is working though with both sides. He is able to use the big capitalists, the big industrialists, but also give rights to workers. He rebuilds the military, and this is going to make industrialists enormously rich. He also put German workers to work, making public buildings, and the Autobahns, or superhighways, I guess the precursors of today's interstates. And by the mid 1930s, 1935, 2/3 of the unemployed are back to work, right? This is really when the Second New Deal is happening in America, and we have not put 2/3 of our people back to work. Unemployment in 1935 is still around 18, 19%. So whatever Hitler's doing is working, right? But know that it's actually massive government interference in the economy. He doesn't allow unions to gather, but he does provide legislation that makes pay increase and also make working conditions better. Also, government mandated vacations, pensions, children's camps, and a promise to overcome class differences, all part of his system that he's using to both become popular and to take care of the German people. Now, a couple of things you want to remember. Part of the magnetism of Hitler, and by the way, this is one of those public buildings. This is the Nuremberg parade grounds, right? So this would be one of those things that Germans were working on to get employed, rather, to make a wage. And 15,000 people at this Nuremberg rally in 1938. This is much later. You imagine this. Look at the order, the symmetry. Going to one of these things would be mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. And that's why many Germans saw this as a resurgence of German might and power. And they were okay with it. They were completely fine. And so when we start to see anti-Semitism really being employed, which, by the way, is not quick, it's kind of ignored because everything else is going okay. All right. Now, Nazism. What is it, right? Now, I know you might be thinking, isn't it pronounced Nazism? Nope, it's pronounced Nazism. Okay. Now, it's a combination of a lot of the philosophies of Darwin and Nietzsche, as well as anti-Semitism and anti-communism. Those are two big components, right? Because just the ideas of Darwin and Nietzsche don't make you a Nazi, right? It's kind of all this flavor, and really Hitler refines Nazism into a particular flavor, right? We can almost say that his brand of Nazism is known as Hitlerism. Okay, Hitler believed, of course, in the superiority of the Aryan race. Jews were behind the evils of the modern world, including the Treaty of Versailles, democracy, communism, the depression, and threats to all traditional values. So Jews are the scapegoats, all right? And once again, the support comes from these huge rallies, as well as educating what are known as Hitler Youth. And there's a great video, go watch this in class, Hitler Youth Training, great primary source, an actual official film made by the War Department. And young people, probably a little bit younger than you guys, would head out to basically a summer camp and spend some time certainly working, but also vacationing and playing. And we'll see in the video that it actually looks like a lot of fun. to be a part of the Hitler Youth Program. Once again, if you are of the Germanic race, Hitler's probably your best friend. Everything that's coming out of the Nazi state seems to be pretty good. At the same time, when you're fed this amount of propaganda from an early age, it is at this point brainwashing, right? Because you are being told and kind of being treated to like a certain ideology before you're educated about any sort of difference. So, anyway, Hitler's very interested in getting the attention of the young, using film, media, the radio, to generate support, right? And actually, what happens out of it is that many Germans revere Hitler as a god, right? Sadly, women's rights during this time are actually, well, there's two things going on. Publicly, women's role is in the home, although what is happening is, because industrialization is increasing, many women end up going to work, but that was not necessarily the intention of Hitler at the time. He was very, very inclined to view women as second-class citizens. I'm trying to pull this up. Yeah, here we go. Adolescent girls were taught that the home was a rightful place and they should have many babies to propagate the superior German race. Here we go. Hitler once said, "A woman must be a cute, cuddly, naive little thing, tender, sweet, and stupid." In the presence of his mistress, Eva Braun, he would frequently make inconsiderate remarks, such as that recorded by Albert Speer. A highly intelligent man should take a primitive and stupid woman, right? So some of these sentiments coming out of Nazi Germany are, of course, not progressive, right? These are more traditional, seeing women's role in the home, but they really are like critical and kind of very, very backward. It's kind of interesting that women went along with this as much as they did. I've not read or at least seen that much literature of women protesting this sort of treatment in Nazi Germany. Now, what happens with the Jews? Okay, keep in mind, Jews are only 1% of the German population. Okay, 1%. That's actually half as much as Jews in America today. Jews are about 2%, 2 or 3% in America today. So, not a very large minority, although a very visible one. They're generally affluent, more affluent than maybe other minority groups. But still, it's not like, Jews are accounting for a fifth of all people in Germany, okay? And, official policy that is aimed at getting rid of Jews in Germany, it's very, very slow. It starts in the summer of 1933. They're removed from civil service and other German cultural positions. But, they're not being sent to concentration camps right out of the gate, okay? It took 2 more years in 1935 with the Nuremberg laws that deprives Jews of their citizenship, okay? Marriages are also forbidden between Jews and Germans at this point. What really gets it going is 3 years later, the night of Kristallnacht, or the night of broken glass. It was on this night, November 9th through 10th, that Nazis destroyed 10,000 Jewish businesses, homes, and synagogues, and sends tens of thousands of Jews to concentration camps. At this point, they are not death camps, okay? The final solution has not even been remotely carried out yet. It's still at least 5 or 6 years away from being fully implemented. But we do see concentration camps, and there is going to be death in those concentration camps. But the crematoriums and the smokestacks of ashes and the gas chambers, all that stuff, it doesn't exist yet. All right, they're being sent to concentration camps. Here's a good picture of a synagogue burning. I'm not 100% sure where this one is, but beautiful, beautiful churches being burned to the ground, right? I imagine this would be a pretty horrifying sight to see at this time period. And once again, you're at this point in time, you're wondering, what are Germans thinking when they're burning these beautiful buildings to the ground? Well, what are they thinking? They're thinking maybe Hitler's onto something. Maybe he's right. Maybe the Jews really did cause all this pain and suffering that we've just recently come out of. Other people being sent to concentration camps include those with physical and mental handicaps, homosexuals, prostitutes. We're also going to see gypsies, the Roma people being sent as well. Anyone deemed inferior or detracting from this perfect Nazi state that Hitler envisions. All right, that's going to be the first part of our lecture. That's about 20 minutes, so I'm going to pause it here, and we'll come back with the second part right after this.